The blood-red sunset painted the Montana sky as Felicity Lawson ran blindly through the gathering dusk, her tears freezing on her cheeks in the bitter November air of 1878. Behind her loomed the imposing Blackstone mansion, a place she had once foolishly believed might become a sanctuary, but had instead become her prison. The thin cotton of her dress offered little protection against the biting wind that swept across the open plains. Felicity had fled with nothing but the clothes on her back, not even a shawl to ward off the rapidly dropping temperature. Her employer, Augustus Blackstone, had finally shown his true nature that evening, cornering her in the library with wandering hands and whiskey-soaked breath. "You're mine now, girl," he had slurred, blocking her escape. "I pay your wages. I put a roof over your head. Time you showed some appreciation." Felicity had managed to escape his grasp only by striking him with a heavy brass candlestick, the impact sending him sprawling. She didn't wait to see if he would rise. The 20-year-old governess simply ran, knowing that remaining meant surrendering to a fate worse than the cold. Now, as darkness settled fully over the landscape, Felicity found herself lost. The lights of the town were nowhere in sight, and the temperature continued to plummet. Her slender body began to tremble uncontrollably, her teeth chattering as she stumbled forward, no longer certain which direction led to salvation. Miles away, Heath Armstrong tightened his coat against the evening chill as he urged his chestnut mare toward home. At 25, Heath had built a modest life for himself in the Montana Territory. After years of driving cattle, he had saved enough to purchase a small ranch of his own, 15 acres with a sturdy cabin and enough grazing land to support his growing herd. He had spent the day in town, purchasing supplies and checking the notices at the sheriff's office for any word of cattle rustlers in the area. Now, with darkness falling rapidly, he was eager to return to the warmth of his cabin. The mare's sudden agitation drew Heath's attention. Her ears pricked forward and she nickered softly, steps faltering. "What is it, Sadie?" Heath murmured, scanning the darkness. At first he saw nothing but shadows and snow-dusted prairie grass. Then a pale shape materialized in the distance, moving erratically across the landscape. Curious and concerned, Heath guided Sadie toward the strange apparition. As they drew closer, the shape resolved into a human figure, a woman, stumbling through the snow, her movements growing increasingly uncoordinated. "Hello there," Heath called out, but the figure continued on, seemingly unhearing. He spurred Sadie into a trot, closing the distance quickly. The woman's pale face lifted toward him, her expression dazed. Even in the dim light, Heath could see tears glistening on her cheeks and the violent tremors racking her body. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked, already knowing the answer. The woman's lips moved, but no sound emerged. Before Heath could dismount, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed into the snow. Heath swung down from the saddle, kneeling beside the unconscious woman. Her skin was ice-cold to the touch, her breathing shallow. Without hesitation, he shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around her slender frame. Then, gathering her into his arms, he lifted her onto Sadie's back before mounting behind her. "Hold on, miss," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "I've got you now." Cradling her against his chest, Heath turned Sadie toward home, urging the mare into the fastest pace he dared in the growing darkness. The woman's breathing remained shallow, her body trembling even in unconsciousness. Heath knew that every moment counted. The lights of his cabin had never been such a welcome sight. As soon as they arrived, Heath carried the woman inside, laying her gently on his bed before hurrying to stoke the fire in the hearth. The cabin quickly filled with warmth as flames leaped to life. Returning to the woman's side, Heath hesitated. Her dress was soaked through from the snow, and he knew she needed dry clothing, but he was reluctant to undress her without permission. Instead, he wrapped her in every blanket he possessed, hoping it would be enough until she regained consciousness. As the firelight illuminated her features, Heath was struck by her beauty. Even pale with cold, her face was delicately formed, framed by auburn hair that had come loose from its pins. She couldn't be much older than 20, he guessed, wondering what circumstances had driven her out alone on such a bitter night. An hour passed before the woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering open to reveal eyes the color of summer grass. She gazed at Heath in confusion, then fear flashed across her face and she tried to scramble away. "It's all right," Heath said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe here. I found you out on the prairie, half frozen. I'm Heath Armstrong." The woman stared at him, clearly assessing whether he could be trusted. Finally, she spoke, her voice hoarse from the cold. "Felicity Lawson, I was running." "From what?" Heath asked gently, Felicity's eyes filled with tears. "My employer, he tried to." She couldn't finish the sentence, but Heath understood. "You're safe now," he repeated firmly. "This is my cabin. No one will harm you here, Miss Lawson." "Felicity," she corrected softly. "After what you've done for me, I think formalities seem rather unnecessary." Heath smiled. "Felicity, then, you need dry clothes. I have some that might fit you well enough for now." He crossed to a wooden chest and withdrew a clean flannel shirt and a pair of woolen trousers. "They'll be too large, but they're warm." "Thank you," Felicity said, accepting the clothing. When Heath turned his back to give her privacy, she added, "You're very kind, Mr. Armstrong." "Heath," he responded, "and it's nothing anyone wouldn't do." "I'm not sure that's true," Felicity said quietly as she changed beneath the blankets. "There are many in this world who would take advantage of a woman in my position." When she had finished changing, Heath prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and coffee. Felicity ate ravenously, color gradually returning to her cheeks. "Where were you heading?" Heath asked as they sat before the fire. Felicity stared into the flames. "I don't know, away. I have no family, no friends in these parts. I took the governess position with the Blackstone family 6 months ago, but—" She shuddered. "I can't go back." "Of course not," Heath agreed. "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what's best." That night, Heath slept on a pallet before the fire while Felicity took his bed. Outside, the wind howled, driving snow against the windows, but inside the cabin, warmth and tentative trust began to grow. Morning dawned clear and cold. Heath awoke to find Felicity already up, attempting to cook breakfast. He smiled at the sight of her, swimming in his clothes, her hair falling in waves down her back. "You needn't do that," he said, rising from his makeshift bed. Felicity turned, a shy smile gracing her lips. "I wanted to repay your kindness, though I'm afraid I'm not much of a cook." "Neither am I," Heath admitted, moving to help her. Together, they prepared a breakfast of cornmeal mush and coffee. As they ate, Heath considered their situation. "There's a town about 10 miles south," he said. "Perhaps there's work there for you." Felicity's face fell slightly. "Perhaps, though without references." She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "I'll find something. I've always managed before." "You could stay here," Heath found himself saying, surprising them both. "I mean, just until you find something suitable. I could use some help around the place, and winter's setting in. Travel will be difficult." Felicity studied him, wariness in her gaze. "That's very generous, but why would you offer such a thing to a stranger?" Heath considered her question seriously. "I know what it's like to be alone in the world. My parents died of fever when I was 15. I've been making my way ever since. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to extend a hand." After a moment, Felicity nodded. "All right. I accept your offer, but only if you'll allow me to earn my keep. I won't be charity." "Agreed," Heath said, offering his hand. Felicity's slender fingers clasped his, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or the first seeds of something more. The days fell into a rhythm. Heath taught Felicity about ranch life, how to feed the cattle, mend fences, and tend to Sadie. In return, Felicity transformed the sparse cabin, creating small comforts from seemingly nothing. She fashioned curtains from old flour sacks, organized Heath's haphazard possessions, and gradually improved her cooking skills. They learned each other's stories. Heath told of his years as a cowhand, working cattle drives from Texas to Montana before saving enough to purchase his own land. Felicity spoke of growing up in an orphanage in St. Louis, her determination to make something of herself leading her to become a governess despite the challenges faced by a young woman alone. A week passed, then two. The snow continued to fall, effectively isolating them from the nearest town. Heath found himself looking forward to the evenings by the fire, when Felicity would read aloud from one of his few books or simply talk with him. Her quick wit and intelligence surprised him continually, as did her resilience in the face of hardship. For her part, Felicity discovered in Heath a kindness she had rarely encountered. He never raised his voice, never made demands, and always treated her with respect. Gradually, the fear that had been her constant companion began to recede. One evening, as they sat before the fire, Heath found himself watching Felicity as she mended one of his shirts. The firelight gilded her profile, catching the subtle auburn highlights in her hair. "You're staring," she said without looking up, though a smile played at the corners of her mouth. Heath felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Sorry, I was just thinking." "About what?" She set aside her mending, giving him her full attention. "About how different the cabin feels with you here," he admitted. "It's become a home." Felicity's smile deepened. "I've been thinking the same thing. I've never really had a home before. The orphanage was just a place to live, and the Blackstone house." She shuddered slightly. "Have you thought about what you'll do when the snow clears?" Heath asked, dreading her answer. Felicity hesitated. "I should find work, I suppose." "I can't impose on your kindness forever." "It's not an imposition," Heath said quickly. "I like having you here. I like you." The admission hung between them, charged with possibility. Felicity's cheeks flushed, and she looked down at her hands. "I like you too, Heath," she said softly. "More than I should, perhaps." Before Heath could respond, a loud pounding at the door startled them both. Felicity tensed, fear flashing across her face. "Stay here," Heath said, rising and moving to the window. Peering out, he saw 3 horses, their riders standing impatiently at his door. One of them he recognized as Sheriff Davies from town. Heath opened the door, stepping out onto the porch to speak with the men rather than inviting them inside. "Evening, Sheriff," he said, nodding to the older man. "What brings you out in this weather?" Sheriff Davies removed his hat, showing respect despite the cold. "Evening, Armstrong. We're looking for a young woman, a governess who went missing from the Blackstone place about 3 weeks back. Blackstone's offering a reward. Says she stole some valuables before running off." Heath's face remained impassive, though anger burned through him at the lie. "Is that so? Mr. Blackstone is most anxious for her return," said one of the other men, a thin-faced individual with cold eyes who Heath guessed was Blackstone himself. "She's a disturbed young woman, prone to hysterics and fabrications. I fear for her safety alone in this wilderness." "Haven't seen any young women," Heath said calmly. "Been snowed in here for weeks." Blackstone's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Mind if we have a look inside, just to be sure?" "I do mind," Heath replied, his hand drifting casually to the pistol at his hip. A man's home is his own, especially out here. Sheriff Davies, sensing the tension, intervened. Now, Blackstone, we can't go barging into a man's home without cause. If Armstrong says he hasn't seen her, that's good enough for me. Blackstone looked far from satisfied, but after a tense moment, he nodded curtly. Very well. But if you do see a young woman, auburn hair, green eyes, calls herself Felicity Lawson, I'd appreciate word sent to the Blackstone Ranch. Heath nodded noncommittally. If I see anyone fitting that description, I'll be sure they know you're looking for them. The men departed, and Heath watched until they disappeared into the darkness before returning inside. He found Felicity standing by the fire, her face pale, hands clasped tightly together. "They're looking for me," she whispered. "Augustus will never stop. He can't bear to be defied." Heath crossed to her, taking her trembling hands in his. "He won't find you. I won't let him hurt you." "You don't understand," Felicity said, tears gathering in her eyes. "He's a powerful man. He could make trouble for you, claim you're harboring a thief. I should go find somewhere else." "No," Heath interrupted firmly. "You're not going anywhere, Felicity. We'll figure this out together." His determination seemed to calm her somewhat. "Thank you," she said, squeezing his hands. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me that night." "I'm glad I did," Heath said simply. Then, without planning to, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, tentative and questioning. For a moment, Felicity froze and Heath began to pull away, fearing he had overstepped. But then her arms slid around his neck, and she kissed him back with a fervor that took his breath away. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. "I'm sorry," Heath began, but Felicity pressed her fingers to his lips. "Don't apologize," she said. "I've been wanting you to do that for days." Heath smiled, touching his forehead to hers. "Then I should have done it sooner." That night, their relationship shifted, deepening into something neither had expected to find. Though Felicity still slept in Heath's bed while he took the pallet by the fire, there was a new awareness between them, a tenderness in every glance and touch. The following morning, Heath announced his intention to ride into town. "It's too dangerous," Felicity protested. "What if you encounter Blackstone again?" "That's precisely why I need to go," Heath explained. "I need to understand what we're facing. And I want to speak with the sheriff privately, get a sense of where he stands." Reluctantly, Felicity agreed. "Please be careful. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me." Heath kissed her gently. "I'll be back before dark. Keep the door locked, and if anyone comes, hide in the root cellar beneath the kitchen floor." The journey to town was uneventful, the trail passable despite the recent snow. Heath headed directly to the sheriff's office, finding Davies alone, reading a newspaper with his boots propped on his desk. "Armstrong," the sheriff greeted him, setting aside the paper. "Figured you might come by." "Figured right," Heath replied, closing the door behind him. "What's the real story with Blackstone and the missing governess?" Davies sighed, running a hand over his grizzled beard. "Suspected as much when you were so quick to say you hadn't seen anyone. She's with you, isn't she?" After a moment's hesitation, Heath nodded. "She ran from him because he tried to force himself on her. She didn't steal anything." "I believe you," Davies said, surprising Heath. "Blackstone's got a reputation, though most are too afraid of his influence to speak against him. This isn't the first young woman to flee his household under similar circumstances." "Can you help us?" Heath asked. "She's terrified he'll find her." Davies considered this. "Officially, I can't interfere in what Blackstone claims is a civil matter between employer and employee. Unofficially," he leaned forward, "I'd suggest getting her somewhere Blackstone can't reach her, maybe all the way to Helena or even further." "I can't leave my ranch," Heath said, frustration evident in his voice. "Everything I have is tied up in that land." Then you'd best find a way to make her untouchable, Davies advised cryptically. Now, I never had this conversation with you, understood? Heath nodded, understanding the sheriff's precarious position. Thanks, Davies. As he left the sheriff's office, Heath pondered the situation. Make her untouchable. There was really only one way to do that, and the thought made his heart race. He and Felicity had known each other for less than a month, but already he couldn't imagine his life without her. Making a decision, Heath turned Sadie toward the town's small general store. There was something he needed to purchase before returning home. Felicity spent the day in anxious anticipation of Heath's return. To keep her mind occupied, she threw herself into chores, baking bread and preparing a hearty stew for dinner. When she heard hoofbeats approaching, she rushed to the window, relief flooding through her at the sight of Heath dismounting from Sadie. "How was town?" she asked as he entered, stomping snow from his boots. Heath smiled, though she detected nervousness behind his expression. "Educational. The sheriff knows you're here, but he's not inclined to help Blackstone." "That's something, at least," Felicity said, ladling stew into bowls. "Come eat while it's hot." Throughout the meal, Heath seemed distracted, his responses to her questions brief. When they had finished eating, he rose abruptly from the table. "I need to ask you something," he said, pacing the small cabin. "Something important." Felicity watched him, concern growing. "What is it? Has something happened?" Heath stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Sheriff Davies suggested I find a way to make you untouchable to Blackstone. There's only one way I can think to do that." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small object. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they came west together." He opened his hand to reveal a simple gold ring. Felicity's breath caught in her throat. "I know it's soon," Heath continued, his voice growing steadier, "but I've never felt this way about anyone before. I love you, Felicity. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love the way you've made this place a home. If you'll have me, I want to spend my life with you." Tears filled Felicity's eyes as Heath knelt before her. "Felicity Lawson, will you marry me?" For a moment, she couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotion. Then, with tears streaming down her cheeks, she nodded. "Yes, Heath. Yes, I will marry you." Heath slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her into his arms, kissing her with all the love he felt. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at once. "I love you too," Felicity whispered against his lips. "I never thought I could feel this way, safe and cherished and completely myself all at once." They were married 2 weeks later in the town's small church, with Sheriff Davies and his wife as witnesses. Felicity wore a simple blue dress purchased from the general store, and Heath wore his best shirt, freshly pressed for the occasion. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, their vows spoken with conviction and joy. As they rode home together, now husband and wife, Heath felt a sense of completion he had never known before. His arm tightened around Felicity's waist as she sat before him on Sadie. "Welcome home, Mrs. Armstrong," he said as their cabin came into view. Felicity leaned back against him, contentment radiating from her. "It's been home since the moment you carried me through the door." That night, as snow fell gently outside, they came together as husband and wife, their love expressed in tender touches and whispered devotions. In each other's arms, they found a passion neither had experienced before, their bodies and souls joining in perfect harmony. 2 days after the wedding, Augustus Blackstone arrived at their cabin, accompanied by 2 hired men. Heath met them outside, his stance casual but his hand near his pistol. "Mr. Armstrong," Blackstone said coldly, "I believe you're harboring my governess." "I'm harboring no one," Heath replied evenly. "My wife, however, is inside." Blackstone's face darkened with anger. "Wife? What nonsense is this?" The cabin door opened, and Felicity stepped out, standing tall beside Heath. "It's no nonsense, Mr. Blackstone. Heath and I were married by Reverend Thompson 2 days ago. Sheriff Davies and his wife were witnesses." Blackstone's eyes narrowed as he took in the gold band on Felicity's finger. "A convenient arrangement," he sneered. "But it changes nothing. You still stole from me, girl." "I stole nothing," Felicity retorted, her voice steady despite her fear. "And I am no longer your employee. I am Mrs. Heath Armstrong, and this is my home." "I suggest you leave," Heath added, his tone deceptively mild. "My wife and I have work to do." Blackstone glared at them both, fury evident in every line of his body. For a tense moment, Heath feared the man might order his companions to attack. But even Blackstone knew the law protected a married woman differently than a single governess. To pursue her now would bring scrutiny he couldn't afford. "This isn't over," Blackstone spat, turning his horse. "No one defies me without consequences." "It is over," Heath called after him. "And if you come near my wife again, you'll answer to me." They watched until the three riders disappeared from sight. Only then did Felicity release the breath she had been holding, her shoulders sagging with relief. "You think he'll leave us alone now?" she asked, leaning into Heath's embrace. "I do," Heath assured her. "He's a bully, and bullies back down when confronted. Besides, he knows the sheriff is watching him now." Life settled into a new normal for Heath and Felicity Armstrong. Spring brought new calves to their small herd and a garden that Felicity tended with loving care. Summer saw the completion of an addition to their cabin, a second room that would serve as a nursery for the child Felicity was carrying. When their daughter was born on a crisp autumn day in 1879, they named her Hope, for that was what their love had given them, both hope for a future brighter than either had dared to imagine. 5 years later, as Heath sat on the porch of their now expanded home, watching Felicity chase their laughing daughter and 3-year-old son through the tall grass, he marveled at how completely his life had changed. The lonely bachelor's cabin had transformed into a bustling family home, filled with love and laughter. Felicity caught his eye and smiled, that same smile that had captured his heart on a cold winter night years before. She walked toward him, their children trailing behind her like ducklings. "What are you thinking about, looking so serious?" she asked, sitting beside him on the porch steps. Heath wrapped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "I was thinking about the night I found you, how close I came to riding past, not seeing you in the darkness." Felicity laid her head on his shoulder. "But you did see me. You always see me, Heath." "And I always will," he promised, kissing her softly. As the sun set over the Montana prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Heath Armstrong knew with absolute certainty that finding Felicity had been the greatest blessing of his life. From tragedy had come joy, from desperation had come hope, and from a chance encounter on a snowy night had come a love that would endure for all their days.